Hey folks, this is Kelani. With the pre-patch finally here, hopefully you've had a chance to test out the class changes for your favourite characters and see what's fun and what's maybe not so fun. That's assuming you can get on and stay on, I suppose. The servers have been a bit of a roller coaster, haven't they? Lots of bugs, lots of scaling issues, but hopefully that will all be sorted by the time next week rolls around. I guess that's maybe why we don't have the actual pre-patch events yet, to give the dev team a week to figure out everything else before adding more stuff into the game. But in the meantime, let's have a look at another class as we head into Battle for Azeroth. Anyone interested in some booze? Good stuff, because we're going to be looking over the Monk class. What are they good at? Where do they fall short? And ultimately, are they worth playing in Battle for Azeroth? Monk's one of the few classes who have access to every role. They can DPS, tank, and heal. Honestly, that's one of the key factors that I've been considering recently. I don't want to be locked into just DPSing for another expansion. I fancy branching out into tanking and maybe a spot of healing. Having that flexibility also means you can help out your friends if needed, skip a few dungeon or raid queues, and if you're struggling to get into a group as a DPS, well, maybe they'll take you as a healer. Keeping up with all three roles and specs should be a lot easier in Battle for Azeroth as well, thanks to the artifacts being character bound instead of spec bound. As a quick note, all monk specializations provide a special debuff called Mystic Touch, which is applied to any enemy they hit. This debuff increases the physical damage the targets take by 5%, making it a must-have debuff for raids and very valuable everywhere else. Let's start things off with DPS, because that's probably what a lot of people are going to gravitate to. Windwalker monks haven't really changed much going from Legion to Battle for Azeroth. Most of the changes come from losing the artifact weapon, so we lose our artifact ability and a handful of passives. Some have become talents like Good Karma, so be on the lookout for those. Others have actually become baseline, like the extra damage when you use Touch of Death. Perhaps the largest change is actually the global cooldown change, which is going to affect everyone a little differently, but monks were always a very fast-paced DPS class. Having your cooldowns and talents like Energizing Brew on the global cooldown might feel quite jarring at first. Hopefully you can overcome it. There is one other change which smooths out the rotation a little bit by making some of your harder hitting abilities come off cooldown a little faster. Blackout Kick now reduces the cooldown of Rising Sun Kick and Fist of Fury by 1 second. Honestly, apart from those changes, you're looking to be about the same. Windwalker monks are great in both single target and AoE situations, but they really excel when more targets are added into the mix. They have so many options to deal a whole bunch of AoE damage, including their main cooldown, Storm, Earth and Fire. Splitting yourself into 3 mini U's just to go ham on everything with Fist of Fury, Whirling Dragon Punches and Spinning Crane Kicks is a delightful display and is probably one of the coolest abilities in the game. Not to mention the damage you can kick out if everything is neatly stacked up. Monks also come with an AoE stun no matter what spec you end up playing, which is definitely going to be very valuable in Dungeons and Mythic Plus. I think Windwalkers will be one of the most sought after DPS for Mythic Plus once again. Combo strikes will still be sticking around as the mastery for Windwalker monks, which provided them with some unique playstyle of ability weaving. While that's still going to be relatively important, it looks like the changes to Blackout Kick might end up messing around with it just a little bit. With the way things are right now, and remember this could change by the time BFA launches or by the time the first raid releases, Rising Sun Kick doesn't really bring enough to the table and is only being used to trigger Whirling Dragon Punch if you take it as a talent. The rest of the time you'll be making sure Fists of Fury is on cooldown and using the rest of your chi on Blackout Kick, even if it won't benefit from the Combo Strikes mastery. So even though only a few things were changed, Windwalker might end up changing quite a lot in the long run. This could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on how you feel. The mastery was quite unique to Windwalker and it gave them an interesting playstyle that we haven't seen from any other class. If ignoring Combo Strikes is the most optimal playstyle, that's a little bit weird, but it is simpler in the long run. Personally, it's a little disappointing because I always found Windwalker Monk to be a lot of fun due to the fact that they had a lot of abilities, and a lot of flashy abilities at that. Rising Sun Kick looks really cool, and it just sitting there begging to be pushed is a little saddening. It could change going forward, or as we get to 120 and start getting Azerite gear, Rising Sun Kick might come back into the fold. Another strength of monks, and Windwalker monks specifically, is their mobility. As everyone curses and cries because running through a little tunnel dismounted everyone, you're probably already at the next pack tapping your foot waiting for the tank. Unless the tank is a demon hunter, I guess. Several charges of roll and the glorious Flying Serpent Kick can generate a crazy amount of distance in just a handful of global cooldowns. This allows you to get from pack to pack very quickly, but also to effortlessly deal with any boss abilities that require you to move. Throw in Transcendence for good measure, and you shouldn't ever have a problem with movement, no matter what an encounter throws your way. So what about weaknesses? There's got to be a few hidden between the cracks, surely. Well, with Windwalkers being the only DPS for monks to play, they sort of fall into the same pitfalls as Ret Paladins and Shadow Priests. If they're not doing very well, you're sort of stuck with it. You either push through with the problems, or you play something else for the meantime. Obviously, if you're happy tanking or healing, that's maybe not so much of an issue, but if all you want to do is DPS, well, you've been warned. The other weakness that Windwalker monks suffer from is that outside of Touch of Karma, they don't really have a defensive cooldown to help them survive against those big AoE hits you know are waiting for you in High Mythic Plus keys, or even in Mythic raid encounters. They might need a little extra help on that front. As we did for previous videos, let's have a poke around the Azeroth traits to see if we can find anything exciting. We have one which reduces the cooldown of Touch of Death by the teeniest amount I think I've ever seen on any talent or trait every time you combo strike, but that does mean most abilities you use should trigger this. And then we have a couple which increase the potential of Rising Sun Kick. There might be hope after all. One of them increases the damage of your next Rising Sun Kick whenever you use Blackout Kick, and the other causes Rising Sun Kick to apply a debuff which deals extra damage when you hit the target. Not too bad I guess, but nothing super exciting either. Let's move on to Mistweavers, who have been generating quite a bit of buzz recently. Throughout the beta they've been very strong healers, which is great because Soothing Mist is back, which means the general playstyle of Mistweavers has taken a bit of a step back to what it used to be, channeling Soothing Mist while being able to cast some other abilities. That's going to make monks fantastic spot healers going forward, but I think a lot of players will just be happy to see the return of the old playstyle. If you moved away from Mistweaver because you missed Soothing Mist, it might be a great time to pick up your monk again. Quite a few other spells and abilities have changed as well, like Vivify, healing all targets affected by renewing mists, as well as your primary target, and Thunder Focus T empowerments have been changed as well, so just be sure to give all of your spells a thorough read through. Now I did say they were strong throughout beta, and while they should still do pretty well for themselves, they have been the target of a handful of nerfs. They used to be the undisputed champions of throughput, heads and tails above the rest of the healers. They have been brought down a peg or two since, so if you were basing your opinions on some of the earlier builds we were playing, you might need to rein in your expectations, but they should still do their job wonderfully. What job, you ask? Well, that depends on what talents you decide to take. You can focus your efforts into single target heals and crank out those constant tank heals, or swap things around for more AoE heals and even take a jab at fist weaving, allowing you to deal damage and heal at the same time. Everybody wants to be a disc priest these days. Actually, out of Paladin, Priest and Monk, weren't monks the first to play around with that playstyle? I digress. What can Mistweavers do well? Healing. They're very good at healing, and while that might seem like a given, Monk's throughput is still really solid. Whatever you decide to talent for, you're going to rock those meters doing it. If you go for a raid healing setup, you'll steadily keep your raid alive. If you go for a tank healing setup, as long as the tanks do their thing right and don't derp out, you should be getting a steady stream of heals to them. That's where Mistweaver's strengths currently lie, raw throughput numbers. Sadly, their weaknesses might end up being quite a big problem. While they're fantastic at general throughput, they don't really have any huge cooldowns. Revival is always fun for sniping half of the AoE damage that just went out, but after that initial burst of health, you can't really do much else besides your normal healing rotation. There's no healing tide totem, no spirit link totem, no huge bubble. There isn't even really a standard throughput increase cooldown like wings. If your standard heals aren't cutting it, chances are you're going to have to rely on another healer to get the job done. That means Mistweavers work really well as part of a team, but there might be a few other healers ahead of you on the priority list because they bring a lot of utility and raid cooldowns as opposed to just raw healing. Either way, Mistweaver remains one of the coolest healers visually thanks to all of the amazing smell effects from your channeling spells like Soothing Mists and Essence Font, and I'm sure they'll find a spot in most raids. Mythic Plus dungeons should be fine as well, but the super serious players will probably end up preferring a few of the other healers. As for Azeroth traits, most of them will be standard throughput increases because healers seem to get the boring traits, but we have one which gives Vivify a bit of a boost, and crits will reduce the cooldown on revival by 1 second. This one increases the healing of Essence Font and gives it a chance to reduce the cooldown of Thunder Focus T by 1 second, and here's one more which gives Renewing Mists a chance to grant you quite a bit of haste. And our last spec for monks is the wonderful, the dizzying, the probably drunk Brewmaster. If you watched my tank video from a few days ago, you already know what I think about Brewmaster monks. Honestly, I think they're going to be one of the best, if not the best tank early on for a variety of reasons, but more often than not it just comes down to stagger. Smoothing out a damage pattern is so essential while tanking pretty much anything. It gives you a chance to react to heavy damage and either use a cooldown or get rid of some staggered damage, and it gives healers both a chance to react to incoming damage, but also way more time to actually deal with the healing required. Taking damage over time instead of upfront damage is such a powerful tank ability. It does come at a bit of a price though. You're more or less entirely reliant on your healer to keep you alive. Monk's self-sustain isn't all that great, but hopefully you have a pocket healer who you can trust to get the job done. Whether you're wanting to tank Mythic raid content or just high-end Mythic plus keys, monks are going to be a great choice, with Iron Skin Brew reducing the damage you stagger even further, and with Guard returning as a talent choice, Brewmasters should end up being pretty sturdy. They also have a nice variety of abilities to use, from throwing kegs and covering your enemies in ale, to setting them all ablaze with a quick breath of fire. They're also very mobile tanks thanks to Roll or Torpedo if you talent for it, so you shouldn't end up getting left behind too much in dungeon groups. The only other tank with as much mobility as a monk is probably a Demon Hunter. They're also kicking out quite a bit of damage as a tank, which is always nice to have on top of everything else. The main weaknesses of Brewmaster tanks reveal themselves if you ever get really far behind in terms of healing and health. If you're just absolutely overwhelmed, there's not much else you can do to make it better. You have fantastic ongoing mitigation, but you only have one large cooldown in Fortifying Brew and very little self-sustain. As I said before, you're going to be relying on your healers quite a lot. They should be thanking you though. Monks are hopefully going to be one of the easiest tanks to keep alive. There's not much else to be said. Personally, I'll be making a Brewmaster Monk as my first alt because I enjoy them a great deal, but I still think my Paladin is a little more fun. I am having a blast pulling more and more in each dungeon though, just to see what I can get away with as a Brewmaster Monk. As for Azeroth traits, we have one which reduces your current stagger whenever you use Blackout Strike, one which gives Blackout Strike some extra oomph and crits give you a stack of Elusive Brawler, and one which grants you mastery based on your current stagger. Again, nothing too exciting, just a few nice bonuses. Overall, I think monks are going to do really well in Battle for Azeroth for the exact same reasons they did well in Legion. Not enough has really changed to cause any problems big enough to bench a monk no matter what spec they end up playing. I'll be looking forward to playing with the Windwalker monk in my Mythic Plus group and playing my Brewmaster alt when I fancy a break from throwing shields at everyone. In my books, they definitely are worth playing. What do you think of monks from what you've seen so far? Will you be playing a monk in Battle for Azeroth? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. If you want to hop on that train, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.